Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to call this special Quorum Court meeting to order. The purpose of this meeting is to continue working on items pertaining to the 2016 budget process. The prayer and the pledge is going to be handled by J.P. Tom Lundstrom. J.P. Lundstrom.
Join me in prayer, please. Father, we're so thankful for this wonderful nation that you've given us. We're thankful for Washington County and the people that live here. We call it God's country. This meeting we're having tonight, Father, is an important meeting, hopefully fact-filled. We just ask your blessing upon it, your blessing upon those that participate in it. And we ask it in the name of our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, and for his sake. Amen. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, J.P. Lundstrom. Roll call. Carly?
Daniel Balls. Here. Harvey Bowman. Here. Rick Cochran. Here. Robert Dennis.
Here.
Lisa Ake. Here. Ann Harbison. Here. Sharon Lloyd. Here. Tom Lundstrom.
Here.
Eva Madison. Here. Sue Madison. Joe Maxwell. Here. Gary McHenry. Joe Patterson. Here. Butch Pond. Here. Bill Ussery. Here.
Next thing you have before you is the adoption of the agenda. Do I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved.
Do I have a motion and a second? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. This is a special meeting. We're going to go into information from our JPs. We're also going to ask for comments from our people that are here tonight. I've got a room full, and I'd like to, if need be, to recognize everyone here and have you give you the opportunity to say what you need to say. I have a very, very brief statement that I would like to present before we get started. At the September 10th special Quorum Court meeting, my office distributed to you the finance data for the 2016 budget. It was complete with the projected revenue for the next year and with the requested budget from each of the elected officials and the department heads. At that time, I asked questions of you to consider regarding the budget process. A copy of these questions were given to you that night. We've had 12 meetings to date dedicating to the 2016 budget process. It's costing the taxpayers a minimum of $40,000, not to mention the hours and hours of time the department heads and the people in this county have spent away from their homes and their families. I want to point out two questions that I asked the Quorum Court at the meeting on September the 10th. The first question was, what is the target reserve amount that the Quorum Court would like to see in the general fund? Why this amount? And how do you propose to achieve that target? A clear answer was never received on this. No one ever told me why or where. The second question was, is the Quorum Court going to recommend that operating budgets remain flat for 2016, or will any increase or decrease be proposed? The Quorum Court insisted on line item budget hearings. 6 meetings were held to go through every department line item budget line by line. Just these 6 meetings cost $20,000 only to get to the end of November with a motion to cut 2% across the board. Many of the departments present have already reduced their budget to begin with. Today is December the 1st, and we seem to be almost back to square one. Elected officials and department heads are present tonight to address the Quorum Court on the motions made by the first special Quorum Court meeting. I asked that the 2016 budget in the general fund, road fund, and jail fund be reduced by 2%. Before I call up on any of those present, are there any comments that need to be made by any member or all members of the Quorum Court? J.P. Ussery.
Yes, ma'am. I'd like to make a motion that we go ahead and that we adopt the budget with one exception, and that is that from the road department, that we move to the general fund $558,198.
Point of order, the budget's not on our agenda tonight, so we actually can't vote on it, I don't think. We have to give notice of that. I mean, that's why I was sort of disappointed we weren't going to be able to vote on the budget, because it's not on our agenda.
Steve.
I think the public has to get notice of that.
Hang on just a minute, J.P. Ussery.
Yes, ma'am.
You can be discussed and not a motion.
Well, the point of order could be discussed, but let me say this before we engage in that. Regardless, if Justice Madison's point of order is correct, y'all can bring it. You could suspend the rules by a 2/3 motion and bring it off the table and put it on the agenda.
Okay, then I move that we suspend the rules and we bring it off the table.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Then I guess we're ready for a roll call. Carly?
Harvey Bowman,
Yes.
Rick Cochran,
Yes.
Robert Dennis.
Yes.
Lisa Eki. Yes. Ann Harbison. Yes. Sharon Lloyd.
No.
Tom Lundstrom.
Yes.
Eva Madison.
Yes.
Sue Madison. Joe Maxwell.
Yes.
Gary McHenry. Joe Patterson.
Yes.
Butch Pond.
Yes.
Bill Ussery.
Yes.
Daniel Balls.
Yes.
Motion to suspend the rules. Sorry. Motion to suspend the rules passes by a vote 13-1.
So now, with this being passed, we're open for discussion. Is this correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, J.P. Ussery, you're recognized to go back to your comments.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion that we go ahead and adopt the budget, the original budget, with the exception of moving $558,198 from the road fund over into the general fund. This will come from the fuel. The fuel line item, they had $900,000 allocated, and through October, I believe they had spent $275,000 of that. And so I realize there's going to be, we're going to have to change the tax structure just a little bit to accommodate that. But what this will do is they will move to the general fund. Our unappropriated reserves in the general fund will be $6,001,001. And so I move that we do this.
Okay, now just a moment, but our attorney needs to be recognized. Hang tight.
Justice Ussery, may I engage Justice
Yes,
Ussery in a
please.
colloquy? I think we got to be very careful about what funds we're talking about here before, and be clear about that. You can't take road funds and put them in general, but there are general fund monies that are in the road department budget. So I think we need to articulate that to make, in case your motion passes, that we're being very careful that we're putting legal money into a legal fund.
Yes.
And so I take it without knowing that your intent is to take $558,198 out of the road department's general fund revenue and move it into the unappropriated reserve for the general fund.
That is correct.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now I have a question. That's not coming out of the fuel line item, it's coming out of the general reserve. Is this correct? Is this correct, J.P. Ussery?
It's how they juggle it, but the money, I mean, that may be where we have to pull it from that bucket in order to make this all legal. But the money for the road department, that's where the savings is going to be, if that makes sense.
Okay. Everyone understand what J.P. Ussery is trying to do? J.P. Lundstrom. Okay. Well, he's
I was
first.
first.
You're next.
This is basically where I was at our last meeting. I would like to get this thing done. Unfortunately, I don't agree with everything the judge said in her opening remarks. I think we did set a $6 million reserve that we wanted to accomplish very clearly. And we're at, according to Cheryl, about $5.5 million, I think, now. So we're getting close to accomplishing what we set forth initially. With due respect to J.P. Maxwell, I believe the 2% reduction, although I voted for it, I didn't think it was going to affect the personnel side of the budget, which makes it excessive to begin with. But I think that's asking too much since we already took $4 million out of last year's budget, and people have cooperated and worked things back to where we're in pretty good shape. There's only 2 or 3 areas in the budget that I think could be reduced. J.P. Usry has brought one of them up. I think there's a little excessive money in the election commission budget that could be reduced. And I wouldn't mind taking a look at that sales tax, but that could be done at a later time. But I would certainly vote for his motion tonight to get this done. I don't think there's any need to hear from every department head and to get this accomplished, to move it on to the whole quorum court with a due pass recommendation on our budget.
J.P. Madison.
Thank you, Judge. We don't have to move it on to the quorum court. We're sitting as the quorum court, so we can actually pass it tonight. So I had been thinking for some time, I've been talking about the percentage of the general fund sales tax, the 1 cent sales tax that the county gets that goes into the road fund, and we are giving 40% of that sales tax to the road fund. Aren't we talking about taking money from?
Sorry, Justice Madison, you have the opportunity to articulate. Justice Pond has to be able to articulate his point of order.
Right now, we're discussing a proposal made by my colleague here, and it has nothing to do with the sales tax or anything else. I think, should we not be discussing Mr. Usry's proposal?
Judge, in broad terms, I kind of think we are. I think Justice Madison is doing that because she's talking about, I think Justice Usry is talking about passing the budget tonight, and I believe Justice Madison's entitled to talk about.
I'm going to rule over you, J.P. Pond, and I'm going to go ahead and J.P. Madison.
Thank you, Judge. And that sum, that 40% of the county's sales tax, if these may not be the up to the minute projections, but that's $2.6 million that we're taking from general purpose revenue that we're putting in the road fund. And we've been doing this for years, I think to the surprise of many members of the court, maybe not all of us. And that's despite the fact that the road fund was infused with the statewide half-cent sales tax share that the county gets, which is around $1 million a year. So we're constantly giving this money to the road fund, and yet the general fund departments are suffering. And the difference in sort of where we are in terms of projected revenue that's left in the general fund versus the projected budgets in the general fund is a difference of about $2 million. So we're overspending the general fund by about $2 million over revenue, and we're giving that additional revenue to the road department. And so it's sort of like the road department is taking the money from the general fund and kind of keeping us out of balance. But what's interesting about that is the road fund's budget is not even budgeting all of that revenue this year. They're planning to leave over $1 million in their own reserve. And so I don't think it's necessary to take any money from any part of the road department budget. We should take it from the reserve, but I think we should actually take more of it, because we would eliminate the entire debate over the 2%. We wouldn't have to worry about the personnel or the commissioned offices or any of the things that have caused the debate over the past week and a half. We could shift that money. It doesn't even alter the road department's budget. It just shifts the money from their reserves into general fund reserves. And I know they said they were saving that for possibly bad weather. It'll be there. So if we have some event that is a catastrophe for the county, that money will be in the general fund reserves for possible appropriation to the road department. And so I would make a motion that we move that entire unappropriated reserves to from the road fund, not their budget, just their unappropriated reserves, to the general fund unappropriated reserves and do away with the 2%. So I would amend Justice Ussery's motion to make that accomplishment, and then we eliminate all the need for the discussion tonight. We're not amending anybody's budget, and we're putting our unappropriated reserves at $6.5 million, which I think makes us all feel really good about the state of the county's finances. Thank you, Judge.
Do you accept that as a friendly?
No, ma'am, I will not.
Okay. The next one recognizes J.P. Pond.
I had a question.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Now it's proper, Judge.
Okay.
Justice Madison, would you restate your motion, please?
Yes. Sorry. It would simply amend Justice Ussery's motion to be clear that we're not altering anything in the road department budget. Their budget remains exactly as it was approved by the court. But the last numbers I have show that their unappropriated reserve, that they're not budgeting, is $1,029,290. And that, we'd have to ask our treasurer if that's the latest number. But we would shift all of that, leaving the budget intact, and putting that in general fund unappropriated reserves.
$1,229,000.
$1,029,290.
And I would ask you the same question, I guess, for legal purposes, do you think all that's in general?
It is, because according to
Okay.
Mr. Hill's projections, we are taking 40% of the 1 cent sales tax and putting it in the road fund, and that number is $2,643,000. So it would be just adjusting that revenue and shifting it back. So we're essentially taking them down from 40% to some other number.
Where are we now, Steve?
Judge, what's on the floor now is Justice Eva Madison's motion to amend Justice Ussery's motion. So what's on the floor before the justices now is a motion to take $1,029,290 of general fund reserves from the road department, put that into the general fund unappropriated reserves available to everybody. And that was seconded by Justice Sue Madison. And I hope I articulated your motion correctly.
You did. Thank you.
So do we need for discussion now on this?
That is now what's on the floor, Judge, and yes, that's
Okay.
what would be.
Do I have any discussion on this? J.P. Cochran,
Thank you, Judge. A question for our attorney, if you don't mind.
go right ahead.
The change that we're considering here is not really set up as a percentage, and it seems to be that it's of a one-time nature. Would you recommend that we reestablish a percentage split so that as sales tax revenue comes in through the new year, that we apportion between county general and road as it goes through?
I don't know that you could do that tonight,
Okay.
or frankly, at any time in December, and accomplish passing a budget
Okay.
for a variety of reasons.
Okay.
But
For the future,
yeah, I think that's part of what Justice Lundstrom was talking about earlier.
right? Okay. Thank you, Judge.
Any other discussion? Do we need public comment on this?
If I may.
Yes, go right ahead, JPA.
If I may address Justice Madison. So you're looking at line 2000 on page 31, the last report that we received from the treasurer, Mr. Hill, on the reserves that is in the road budget. Is that correct?
Assuming we're operating off the same page 31, but yes, it's page
The same
31.
31 that
and
everybody
it's
got?
the 2000 road fund. And so their budget stays intact, and it's just that unappropriated reserve we'd be moving.
J.P. Pond?
Okay, thank you, Madam
I
Judge.
got Mr. Zaga brought up I think what he was talking about, the point that, and when we start increasing that amount we take from that, is there money in there that was, we're taking money away was contributed for road work only, possibly?
May I
Yes,
address
please.
Justice Pond directly? No, that was the point of my discussion with both Justice Usry and Justice Madison, was that and you can take the sales tax revenue that you're getting, not the half-cent sales tax revenue that's dedicated directly to the road, but our share of the 1% sales tax voted in the early 80s, and spend that on any legal purpose, including roads. And you can take any of the general millage and spend it on any legal purpose, including roads, but that anything that is dedicated to through the road millage is road money, period. And so that's why I was asking the question about what their concept was of where they were moving the money from, more than where they're moving it to.
Okay, very, very well. I do want to say, we have a couple of bridges coming up that we haven't really discussed a lot here on the Horseshoe that there'll have to be money for. I would be voting for Mr. Usry's original proposal if his original proposal actually eliminates that 2% across the board cut. We did word it where it eliminates that, I believe. I'm kind of asking you that. But I will be voting no on Justice Madison's amendment. Thank you.
Any other discussion in the court? I'm sorry, J.P. Harbison.
I'm always concerned when we start moving money out of the road department, because the road department is actually separate from the general fund. And I like J.P. Usry's motion better, although we are moving some money out of there. But everybody on the Horseshoe needs to realize that we already have a road budget, and if we move some of this money out, then there is the possibility that we're going to have to move that money back in, saying that we have, and you've got to remember that the 1/2 cent sales tax that we're receiving from the state sunsets in 10 years, and we've already used 3 years of that, so we only have that income coming in another 7 years, and 7 years really is a very short time. And I when the people voted on this 1 cent sales tax, that's what they voted on: 60% for general, 40% for roads. I will not vote for Eva Madison's motion, but I will support reluctantly J.P. Usry's motion. Thank you.
I would like to recognize one of my assistant road superintendent, Charles, and then my George, if y'all would come up and tell us how you feel about what is just going on.
Yeah, you guys sit there.
Pull up another chair there, guys.
We were just talking, basically the way this, excuse me.
Okay, just hang on just a minute. Go ahead. What's your point of order?
Madam Judge, I thought we were having a discussion right now on the motion, and I'm not quite sure under what protocol we've invited these gentlemen to come. We are in the process of the JPs debating this, and I don't know that there is a provision to have members of the public come at this point. It's not an option.
I will say this, it's all my years of quorum court, they do quite often invited particularly department heads to come up and speak during the middle of the meeting.
The body?
After y'all speak, I normally will open it up to the public. So I
Sometimes the
think these
JP would
folks
ask
have got the
somebody to
same
come up.
right that you folks do.
Judge, well, hold on. There's been a point of order made. Judge, no, there's not a, first off, I'll say two things. The JPs are all entitled to speak first if they want to. I didn't see anybody else raising their hand to speak. Justice Maxwell. So Justice Maxwell wants to talk. But, Judge, if you're taking $1 million from a department, it seems to me like they ought to be allowed to talk about the impact of that on their budget.
Y'all just stay, I'm sorry, JP Maxwell, you're recognized. Go ahead. I did not realize you had your hand up. I'm sorry.
Are we done with the point of order?
Yes. I am going to recognize anyone in this public that wants to speak because that's why they're here tonight.
Thank you, Judge. I'm going to be in favor of Justice Madison's motion because what this does is get us away from the limited amount in the reserves, and it doesn't cut into the road department's budget. And so my intent was to call for the question.
Second.
That calls for 2/3, Judge, and it's not debatable.
Okay. Carly, call the roll. Hang tight.
Harvey Bowman.
Yes.
Rick Cochran.
Yes.
Robert Dennis.
No.
Lisa Ecke.
Yes.
Ann Harbison. Sharon Lloyd.
Yes.
Tom Lundstrom.
Yes.
Eva Madison.
Yes.
Sue Madison.
Yes.
Joe Maxwell.
Yes.
Gary McHenry. Joe Patterson.
Yes.
Butch Pond.
No.
Bill Ussery.
No.
Daniel Balls.
No.
Failed 9-5, Judge. The question did.
So now we are, can we go ahead and recognize our,
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, if you don't have any other justices.
do you have it? Yes, JP Madison.
Thank you, Madam Judge. Fellow JPs, I think this is a very good solution to the quandary we find ourselves in. The road department has demonstrated, at least to me this year, with our situation with several bridges that had to be torn down and rebuilt, that there is some reserve in their budget. And I think this gives the county money to have in reserves that will be available for any county use, including the road department, should something arise. So I think it gives us all a comfort level that we've been striving for throughout this budget process. I mean, I've worried about ice storms and tornadoes and lawsuits, and this gives us that cushion, and it is available for any of the county's needs. So I think it is a very good solution to the problem, and I plan to vote yes.
Ann, did you have your hand up?
Yes.
Okay, you're recognized.
This is all county money. This is all taxpayer money. So it's can be moved at any time. I think that what's road money needs to stay as road money. However, I will be voting to move the $558,000. But if they need it, I will definitely support the road people to move from general back into road. But, we're just robbing Peter to pay Paul. So roads are important to this county, and three-fourths of my district is county roads out in the rural area. Thank you.
I have Patterson, Harbison, which I've already recognized, Ussery, and Bowman. Okay, JP Patterson.
Thank you, Judge. If I understand this correctly, we're taking money out of a reserve fund, moving it to another reserve fund, which is still under your bailiwick. The road department can get that money from you if they need it, if we have a 2010 again or whatever. You can't?
Sorry.
I mean, you
It's,
can't come to the quorum court and say we
Any
need...
money that's changed from here has to be up to you folks to do it, not me.
What word sticks out to me is like, we had to deal with the bridges this year, and that was around $900,000, but they had the money in there. They didn't have to come to us for any money, so they had plenty of reserve. And that's quite a bit of reserve. That's a pretty big ice storm or pretty big flood or whatever, $900,000 worth of road work, if we could even get to it. So that was just my question. I didn't really see that we was really taking it away where they couldn't get back to it if they needed it. Correct, Steve? Or wrong?
No, if you take it from
They can't come and ask for it back?
No, they come and ask for it, certainly, but if you take it from the road budget and put it into general unappropriated reserves, that's y'all that have to give it back to whomever if they ask for it.
I don't really have a problem with that. I think we always come through on things when we have to do it, but anyway, so that's why I supported this one time. Thank you.
JP Osry.
I guess a couple of things. They have the reserve because they know they have some things coming up they're going to need that for. One of the things that I'm very strong on, and I'm going to say something tonight at the end of the meeting, and next year, we have to have a plan, a long-term plan. They have a long-term plan. Some of us may not realize that, but they do. They've got some things coming up they know they're going to need that money for, and they're squirreling that money back for that, and they have it in case, not in case, but when an emergency comes up. If we can pass the budget and go exactly the way that I talked about earlier, I think that we can all come out and everything will work the way it should. But again, because they have been wise enough to set the money aside, I think that it's very short-sighted of us to take that money away from them and then next year say, well, if you come and beg us, we'll give it back to you, when they know that they're going to need it. Thank you.
JP Bowman.
You know, thank you, Judge. Ann made a comment that a large percentage of her territory is in county roads. And I think Ann will tell you that I'm one of the best advocates for county roads of anybody on this court. And I don't have a single mile of county road in my territory. Now, you know, guys, we seem to be forgetting the fact that a number of our departments have made huge sacrifices in their budgets to help us reach this goal. And I don't see that it's a great deal of problem for us to move reserves out when you all know if we have an issue out here in the road department, if they need money, we're going to come in here and get that money for them. So I think it's, you know, I don't understand why we can't come to an immediate decision about this thing and recognize we're moving that money from one pocket to another, and it's available through a decision of this group right here around this horseshoe. It's not moving earth and sky to get a decision like that made. So let's knock this thing off and put this budget to bed tonight and recognize the sacrifice that all these other departments have already made. We can move it back as needed. So let's go ahead and get this doggone thing done. I think Justice Madison's proposal is completely appropriate, and I'll definitely be supporting it. Thank you.
JP Madison.
Thank you, Madam Judge. I actually have an attorney, maybe for Ms. Bollinger or Mr. Zega, I'm not sure, but if I'm looking at the numbers correctly, the road department's current revenue, if we leave the 40% sales tax in, is just over $10 million. So that would be the projected revenue into the road fund. They've budgeted just shy of $9 million, so that leaves the million in unappropriated reserves. And so I was puzzled by Justice Ussery's comment that they have things that they're planning for. Their budget, under my amendment, stays intact. So anything they plan for next year is still there, not cut at all. But my question is, whether that money remains in the road fund or the general fund reserves, if they wanted to dip into it, they still have to come to us. Because if they want to go over their $9 million budget, they still have to come to us, right? So if they wanted to spend an extra $100,000 on asphalt, they'd have to come to us to either get it out of the road.
To take it out of the road reserve.
Either one.
Yes.
Okay, so if we move this million to the general fund unappropriated reserves, they're in exactly the same position they are now, but it just frees up that money for anybody else in the county that might need it. Right?
Let me be clear about this. For them to spend money out of a line item other than which you appropriated,
right,
they would require an appropriation ordinance that y'all would have to approve. Is that?
Yeah, I guess, but I'm just, if they wanted to go over their $9 million budget and dip into that reserve, they got to come to us regardless of where that money is.
That would still require an appropriation ordinance.
Okay, so this doesn't change anything from the road department's perspective. It just frees up that money for any other county emergencies. So I just wanted to clarify that we're not cutting their budget at all. We're not cutting anybody's budget. This is just moving money to make it accessible to all should they need it. I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you, Madam Judge.
JP Pond.
I was a little hesitant to go along with Mr. Ussery's proposal because you're taking money that the road department has been very careful to keep on hand for disasters, for bridges coming up that are going to have repairs. Now you take the rest of that reserve. It's not just the road department that's going to be looking at what you're doing. You're going to have every other department watching this. By doing this, we're creating an atmosphere that causes these department heads and elected officials to believe they had better spend the rest of their money before the end of the year. I don't want to see Washington County come to that. I'm proud of our departments for having some money left over at the end of the year, because besides budgeting, a thing that I believe is more important is to not spend money that's unnecessary. Don't do unnecessary spending. I just don't want to see that atmosphere building in Washington County. Thank you.
Harbison.
I'm going to call the question.
Second.
Can we still recognize our people?
Well, not if you cut off debate, Judge.
I'm sorry, guys. Pardon? They call for the question. We can't discuss it. It's ready for a vote.
The question is ready for a vote, Judge.
Okay.
To end debate, you have to, it still takes a vote to end debate.
Okay. Carly, call the roll, please. We're voting.
You're voting on ending debate.
R.B. Bowman? Yes. Rick Cochran? Yes. Robert Dennis?
No.
Lisa Ecke? Yes. Ann Harbison? No. Sharon Lloyd?
Yes.
Tom Lundstrom?
Yes.
Eva Madison?
Yes.
Sue Madison?
Yes.
Joe Maxwell?
Yes.
Gary McHenry? Joe Patterson?
Yes.
Butch Pond?
No.
Bill Ussery?
No.
Daniel Balls?
No.
Fails 9-5.
Hang on just a moment. I think.
Thank you, Madam Judge, and thank you for all the department managers that have worked through all this. I applaud all of you. I think you did a great job on your budgets. I'll just get that out there. I think the reason we voted to fail the question was because we wanted to hear from the road department, just in case they had something to say that we didn't say around the horseshoe. And so if no one else has any more comments, or when everybody's through with their comments, I would like to hear from the road department. Thank you.
Hang on just a minute. J.P. Harbison.
My comment was for us to hear from the road department. I would like to hear from the road department.
Okay, J.P. Madison.
I make a motion we suspend the rules to open it for public comment at this point so that anyone's permitted to talk. There are a lot of people that came to give us input tonight, and I think we're about to make a pretty critical vote, so I think we ought to open it up to everybody.
Okay, suspend the rules and
You can take
open
that
it.
you do that
Okay,
by
I'm
voice
going to
vote.
just, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. So we're going to open up the floor to let anyone speak that wants to speak, and I'm going to recognize my people from the, come on up, guys.
Of course, have you been introduced, formally introduced? This is Charles Waters, our new assistant road superintendent. Didn't know if he'd been introduced or not. I'm sorry. I was introducing Charles. Charles Waters, our new assistant road superintendent. Well, of course, we don't like this, obviously. And we would. I know it's not a huge budget cut, but it is a huge cut in the percentage of money that the road department gets. Cheryl, if my calculations are correct, the way this will have to be accomplished, you'll have to reduce the sales tax money that's going into the road fund, right? Yes. And right now, we're getting 40%, and it sounded like to me we were getting about $2 million. We're taking about $1 million away, so that's going to cut that in half. So it's going to go down to about 20%. Is all right? Or am I way off on my math?
It would actually be closer. The road would receive about, it'd be between 24 and 25%. With Bill's proposal, the road would receive about 31%.
Okay, so with JP, even Madison's proposal, we're going to be getting just 24-25% as opposed to 40%. Well, that's about what I thought. It was going to about cut it in half, cut the 40% in half. It's a little bit of a dangerous step down a road. I feel like down a dangerous road when you do this for several reasons. Because, granted, just like what J.P. Madison said, of course, if it's in our own reserve, we still have to come back to the quorum court to spend it. But now it's over in the general fund reserves, and it's up for grabs. It's not just for the road departments, for anybody else that has a crisis. And we may or may not get the money. I know that, and I think you said with the best of intentions, if you need it, just come back and ask for it, but that hasn't always been the case, not just the road department, but other people too. You don't always get what you ask for. Sometimes they say, well, why don't you cut this line item or that line item? But suddenly this money that was dedicated for roads is up for grabs for everybody. And I feel like that once you do this, you move this money over to the general fund, but you get used to having it, we're never going to get it back. There's a resistance to changing the millage rate, despite every reason in the world to do that, and there's still resistance to do that. The general fund is going to get used to having this money, and the road department's priority over that money is going to continue to slide, and we will never get it back. And so I feel like this is probably a permanent cut in the amount that the road department gets. True, in times of crisis, the road department has taken a cut on one scale. It's gotten much less than 40%, particularly during the after the rollback lawsuit, and we had some lean years, but it always went back up. Based on my experience, my feeling from this quorum court, and don't take offense by it, I think this is permanent. It's not going to be like other quorum courts where we'll eventually get it back. I think this is permanent. And so I look at it as a permanent cut, and if the road department will never get that back, and they'll be fighting to get any of it in times of need. Fuel prices are going to go back up. It's just a question of when. Right now they say they should stay low for next year and even the year after that. That's absent, number one, a war, or number two, a reversal in OPEC's policy in terms of their production. It's going to go back up. But when fuel goes back up, it doesn't just affect the road department, it affects other departments too. So that money's up for grabs for everybody. And so I think it's probably a permanent loss, a permanent reduction. So that's my fear, and that's my comment. Got anything else, Charles?
Charles, what's your comments?
I mean, you pretty well covered it. My biggest concern was when fuel goes back up, which it will, and we may be able to sustain Bill Ustry's cut. But when it does go back up, we're going to have to come back and ask for this same amount. I mean, we've already proved that we've spent, there's 3 years in a row, nearly $1 million in fuel. And then all of a sudden we had a drop. Fuel prices are down, but they will come back up.
Thank you guys very much. I appreciate your time. Do we have anyone else in the audience that would like a public comment? Goodness, y'all are behaving yourselves. Okay, what we're going to do, hang on just a second.
Just a second, you had her hand up, Joe.
Okay, J.P. Ecke, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Madam Judge. I'd just like some clarification on this, if I may have it. Is this a one-time transfer, or is this every year we're going to transfer out the money? That's the first question. The second question is, are we changing the percentage here right now and tonight of the tax percentage that the roads department gets and the county general gets? Because that's what I'm hearing, that's what we've done. So I'd like some clarification on those 2 points, if I may. Thank you, Madam Judge.
Steve, would you please?
I will. My understanding in the way that Justice Madison worded her motion is this is had nothing to do with percentages, was a word. She worded it in terms of dollars. So that is the answer. That's the answer to the second part of your question. And the answer to your first question is more general, and that is y'all be back at this process again next year. So and I don't mean to sound flip with that answer just a second, but you will have the opportunity to revisit these numbers and all of them beginning in September. This is not, in other words, this is for this year.
But that's what we always do. I mean,
Yes, ma'am.
So the way it's stated, this is a one-time deal, and then next year is next year, correct?
Yes, ma'am. And I'm not discounting my predecessor's statement at all, in what his perception of the cultural and political things are. But I'm telling you, the law is that this is a one-time move of $1,029,290 from road department reserves to general fund reserves.
Okay, I would like everybody to hear that, and it's clear. It's a one-time transfer. It is not addressing the percentage of the 1 cent sales tax that the county splits with the road department.
You're not addressing the percentage formula tonight.
Okay, thank you.
George, go ahead.
I think, despite how, I think J.D. Madison said in her, when she was making her motion, that this would have to take an adjustment, this would require an adjustment of the amount of money that the road department was getting, because Cheryl will tell you, as comptroller, she will not just move road money over to the general fund. She will have to reduce the amount of revenue that the road department is getting. Currently at 40%, she's going to have to reduce it to make the arithmetic work. So it is a reduction. True, you have to do it every year, but my prediction is once you've done it, we'll be back here next year, and it's not going to change.
Okay,
And
but
years after that, and years after that, it's not going to change. I don't think that J.P. Madison means this to be temporary. I think she wants it to be permanent. Quite frankly, if you ask her, I mean, that's the what she's expressed at the very beginning of our budget meetings.
I want to just stay clear on what we're doing tonight and the conversations we've had tonight. To go back to September or whatever, I'd prefer not to visit that. But this $1 million is in reserve, so it's not going to be a percentage.
Yes, it will. It will take a percentage. You talk to your comptroller here. It will require her to reduce the percentage of money that
Point
comes
of
into the
order.
road
I think
department.
Justice Ecke has the floor, and
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well,
Thank you, Madam Chair.
J.P. Madison herself said this, and it's a subterfuge to pretend like this is not happening, because it is happening.
Okay, that's okay, George, go ahead. We'll let her,
So I'll yield back to J.P. Ecke, and then y'all talk to your comptroller about that. But she said that, and J.P. Madison even mentioned that in her motion. She knew that that's the mechanics of how that would have to work.
Okay, George, that's
That would
fine.
have to be done.
That's okay.
Okay.
Is that, Lisa, is that all yours? J.P. Bowman?
Thank you, Judge.
Thank you, Judge. We've got to remember that the whole purpose of this process has been to reverse the situation we've had in the county where we're spending more money every year than we're taking in tax revenue. Last year, we exceeded revenue by about $4 million. This year, we're going to exceed revenue by about $2 million, I think, is the latest report I think we've heard from Bobby. And this is an attempt to begin to rebuild our reserves to the point that we can take care of any emergencies we got coming along. We know they've been reduced to a dangerously low level. And to say that we're not going to use good judgment in this court to replace money in the bridge fund or the road fund or whatever other fund needs it, I think is a slap in the face of this quorum court. We're responsible people trying to use the county's money appropriately and properly. And we're moving money out of one pocket into another that's still available to be used however we deem necessary. And doggone, why can't we as a bunch of adults realize that and put this thing to bed? We've talked about it, we've beaten it to death. We're trying to rebuild the reserves until we have enough cash flow here to go ahead and do some of the things we'd all like to see done. But right now, it's a necessary step to rebuild our reserves to the point that we've got some safety out here and opportunity to take care of issues as needed. Thank you, Judge.
J.B. Harbison.
what we're voting on tonight is either to move $558,000 from the road fund or $1 million. $1,029,200, whatever it is. $29,290. I've got it right here. Okay, and that's our decision. I mean, I think everybody has agreed that we're going to have to move something because we cannot expect these department heads to take a 2% cut across the board. And so any way we move it is going to be a percentage of the sales tax because Cheryl has to make the numbers work out. We just can't move money. So she'll have to work out the percentage that we move. So are we going to move 31%, or are we going to leave 24 to 25%? That's the issue. Thank you.
J.P. Patterson?
Thank you, Judge. Steve and Butch will remember this. When we opened the jail, what got left off was the funds that had been running the jail before we moved down south. And we come to the meeting to do the budget, late in the budget, I mean, it was right down to the end. All of a sudden, we had to have $956,000. That's what we had shorting our whole budget. That fund, that fee got overlooked to what the county had been putting into jail before they moved the jail. Well, the circuit clerk gave us the money because she had the fund then it could have a lot of money in it. And I don't recall coming back next year thinking, well, there's always a circuit clerk where we can get our money. Circuit clerk gave us money for raises and things at times, but we hadn't went asking for them, as far as my knowledge, ever. I don't really think that's a problem. There's a couple things that I don't agree with. I don't agree that the one tax that brings in $1 million now will go away in 7 years. I don't know too many taxes that ever go away, but we'll worry about that. Somebody else will be worrying about that. But that'll be here in 7 years. I think this needs to be a one-time deal. I don't think it hurts anything too much. It just gets us to a place that we need to get. We have all of these people out here, about 3 months after we started the budget, and like you say, we're not a lot closer than we were before. So if we do this one time, the motion's up here to take $500,000 anyway, so if we change it the other way, or however it needs to go, and take $1 million, in other words, they're just increasing it to $500,000, or whatever part of that we agreed to, or if any. I'm kind of confused on all of this back and forth, but anyway, I just don't think it's a problem. I just think it's an answer to one-time deal to get it done. And I don't think that everybody on this court will be coming back next September thinking, well, we'll just always go to the road department and get the money. I mean, I know I won't be. Thank you.
J.P. Lindstrom.
Some of this seems like a matter of semantics to me. I mean, our attorney can answer this question, but unless we actually pass an ordinance to change that percentage, it's still going to be 60-40, I believe, next year, because we're not changing a percentage. She's just using a percentage to figure the money. But it has not legally been changed. The percentage rate would not legally be changed in this. And it's my guess that we're not going to move any money anywhere until we vote on it and quit talking about it all night. I think everybody understands where we're at. I want to see all these budgets stay where we all agreed on them before, no 2% decrease, etc. But I do agree with this motion here because the money's there and it could be used in our reserves. That $6 million that we were shooting for, that would give it to us, plus a tiny bit more. So I would like to see us vote on this thing. Thank you, Judge.
Do I have any other public comment? Then I guess we're ready to call for the vote.
Yes, ma'am. What's before you, Justices, is Justice Eva Madison's motion to reduce the road department general reserve by $1,029,290 and take that money and place it into the general fund reserve. Seconded by Justice Sue Madison. Justice Eva Madison, did I articulate your motion correctly?
You did. And can I ask a question, Judge?
Sure, go right ahead.
If I'm not mistaken, we just need a simple majority of those present on a motion to amend?
No, well, it still would take, it would take 8 to pass.
On a motion to amend, I think
Yes.
it's just those present, right?
It's 8 to pass. It's a majority of the court.
Okay, I thought it was on a motion to amend. Robert
No,
Rules
you're right.
said-
That's my
Okay.
mistake. An ordinance, a simple ordinance
Yeah.
would take yes.
Okay, so just take 7.
5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 13. Yes. She's right about that,
So
Judge.
now, are we voting on the actual motion then? Or are we doing
You're
an
now
amendment?
voting on Justice Madison's amendment only.
Okay, any other comment? Carla, would you call the roll?
Harvey Bowman?
Yes.
Rick Cochran?
Yes.
Robert Dennis?
No.
Lisa Eki? Yes. Ann Harbison? No. Sharon Lloyd?
Yes.
Tom Lundstrom?
Yes.
Eva Madison?
Yes.
Sue Madison?
Yes.
Joe Maxwell? Gary McHenry? Joe Patterson?
Yes.
Butch Pond?
No.
Bill Ussery?
No.
Daniel Balls?
No.
Judge, it passed.
So now,
No.
oh,
No. The budget is not yet approved. If it is the pleasure of the court to, and it was brought off the table, I need to read the ordinance. So somebody needs to move to adopt it.
Second.
Second.
An ordinance recognizing revenues and appropriating monies for the expenditures in each fund for Washington County, Arkansas for the year 2016, and adopting a budget for the various departments reflecting the line item expenditures thereof. Be it ordained by the Quorum Court of Washington County, Arkansas, Article 1. The Quorum Court of Washington County, Arkansas has prepared a county budget for the year 2016 for all funds, said budget reflecting the anticipated revenues of Washington County and the line item expenditures authorized for each department within each fund of said county, the number and compensation of deputies and county employees, and the compensation of county officers. Article 2, a copy of the said 2016 budget for each fund with approved amendments shall be on file in the county clerk's office. Article 3, the said 2016 budget is hereby incorporated herein and adopted in full, and all expenditures reflected therein are authorized to be expended. Article 4, the 2016 budget controls are adopted and incorporated herein as if set out word for word. Article 5, the collector's unappropriated fund is a fund separate and apart from the above funds as administered by the county. Article 6, if any part of this ordinance is held invalid, such invalidity will not affect any other portion of this ordinance. Article 7, all laws and parts of law in conflict with this ordinance are repealed.
okay, Joey Harbison?
May I ask the attorney a question?
Yes.
On the vote on this, if we have 3/4 of the quorum, those present, does the budget pass?
No, you need 10 votes for it to pass tonight.
10,
Okay, J.P. Madison.
I just had a question for our attorney as well. Because it's an appropriation ordinance, we don't need to advance it to a reading. We can just vote on this first time, and if it gets 10, we're good.
That's correct.
Okay. But we do need to allow public comment before we vote on the
Yes,
ordinance.
and
Okay.
I think one of you needs to adopt it after I read it.
Second.
I have a motion and a second for it to pass. So before we, any other discussion around the J.P. Ussery?
I'm going to vote for this, but I'm going to hold my nose when I do. I feel like, and I'm going to talk a little bit later about my feelings on this, but I think that we could have done a better job of respecting other people and all the effort that went into it, because there's a tremendous amount of work. And I think the signal that we just sent to the people in the county, that if you work hard and you pigeonhole money away for a future time, that we're going to come in, we're going to steal it, we're going to give it to those who don't work as hard. And so but I will vote for it because it's time to go on down the road, but I will be holding my nose. Thank you.
Thank you. J.P. Cochran.
Thank you, Judge. I'll hold my nose too, but I will vote for it. I want to thank everybody for your hard work in putting your budgets together. Had we come to a $6 million reserve, I believe this would have passed 2, 3, 4 meetings ago. I'm sorry you had to go through this. I'm sorry we had to go through this. The one thing that we've done in this budget that I really don't like is we've kicked the can down the road for employee benefits as far as salaries. We have to do something next year on that, and that needs to be one of our prime focuses early in the budget process next year. Thank you, Judge.
J.B. Arbison?
If we don't do something about revenue, we'll be in the same situation that we are right now, trying to cut budgets to fit the revenue. And the people of this county need to make it known to these JPs that you want services, and you want services, you know, we want good services in the county. We don't have to have all the bells and whistles. But we need to be efficient, and we are being efficient, and we still don't really have the funds in reserve, and we won't have the funds. Roger Haney told us what was going to happen when we lost the 10% on, went from 22% to 18% on the, well, counting people. Anyway, and then we turned around and we reduced the millage by 0.5 of a mil. We have reduced our revenue by almost $15 million. We also, every year, are reducing our revenue by $1 million for businesses, providing them sales tax rebates on equipment. And, I really support this because this creates jobs. But we've got to realize how much money, that we're providing other people, and we're not providing our own employees decent salaries. And I know, we're just doing a bonus this year. We'll be looking at a bonus again next year if we don't do something about revenue. Thank you.
J.P. Ecke, did you have your hand up? Okay, thank you. Yes, J.P. Pond.
Before I reluctantly vote on this, I'm going to take a little time to pay a compliment to the road department and the county judge for being careful with their money and having this reserve on hand. And I appreciate you having that there so we could steal it from you in order to balance our other budget. Thank you.
I'm sorry, J.P. Bowman.
Thank you, Judge. I'm a little bit concerned about the conversation saying we're setting up a situation where the other offices in this building is going to be asking or trying to hide money or spend all the money before the year is over. I believe we've got good, solid representatives out here, people in this courthouse that are taking care of the money. And we've seen a number of those people turn back some money to us without a lot of harassment because they understand the financial stress the county is in. And I want to say thank you to you people because some of you have really made some major sacrifices in your budgets to make it possible. And to say here that we're thinking that everybody's going to go out here and try to hide money or spend money like crazy because they got a little left at the end of the year is ridiculous. I don't think we've got that kind of people in these courthouses. We're trying to take care of this doggone budget. It's been a tough situation. We've lost a lot of revenue. And yes, some of it was census, and some of it was just reduced in business income here in this county. But we are trying to put the county back on a solid financial footing, and we're doing a darn good job of it. So let's go ahead and not presume and assume about what people are going to do here in this building to abuse the money situation. We got good folks here helping us try to put this thing back on track. And I say let's move forward this doggone thing and keep a positive perspective on it and keep the goal in mind. Thank you, Judge.
J.B. Ecke.
Thank you, Madam Judge. I know that the 2% reduction hit a lot of department elected officials like a slap in the face. And I was under the assumption that it was just operational budgets, not personal services. After talking to several of you department heads, I want to apologize that that was your sentiment, and this hand will not be used to slap you in the face, but it will be open to work with you to make Washington County the best county in the state. We have to be competitive with Benton County, and the only way we can remain competitive is if we have the same revenue structure that they have. If they have 5 mills, then we have to have 5 mills in order to support everybody out here. The elected officials, you have the confidence of the public. They voted you in saying, we trust you to run your departments. Then we trust you to run your departments efficiently. You were elected for that. And it shouldn't be me telling you how to run your department, and I won't. The other department heads, I've enjoyed working with you. I think you're doing a terrific job, but I want to work together with you next year to avoid this situation in the future. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Judge.
J.P. Patterson?
Someone said a while ago that we just went back and done what we did last year, and that just changed apples for apples. We really didn't. We put the capital expenses back in. A lot of them. Vehicles for the sheriff and a lot of other things. We're headed in the right direction. Maybe you've forgotten that we've had pretty hard times from about 08 up to about through 13. And we had to do a lot of things for the county. We had a big ice storm in 2010. We had to build a parking deck. We bought a courts building. We've done a lot of things in the last few years. As the judge pointed out here a while back, a lot of that was already dedicated when she took office. So it hadn't been easy for particularly anybody. It hadn't been easy for us. It hadn't been easy for you. But we appreciate it. But I don't sit around dwelling thinking about how we're going to hook you next year. That's the farthest thought from my mind. Next year, it's just, which will start when this is over, is just how can we make it better and how can we get there and how can we increase our revenues without just taxing everybody to death. Thank you.
I'm going to take the liberty to just say a very, very short statement here. I know that my road department has taken the full blow of this. I know that they're gracious about it. So I hope the rest of you folks sitting out there appreciate what the road department has done for you this year, because they have certainly carried the load. And I just want each one of you to know that, and I appreciate all of you. I've been here so long that I've worked with every one of you out there, and I love each and every one. You're my friends. But please be appreciative of what the road has done, because they picked the slack up this year. Thank you very much. Are we ready for the
Unless somebody else wants to talk, Judge. Oh, yeah, public comment.
public comment? Please, if any of you have got anything, I want you to come forward, and I want you to say what you've got on your minds. Come on, Sheriff.
Been kind of an odd budget cycle for all of us, I think. Justice Ecke, when you said it was a slap in the face, it truly was. I wasn't able to be at that meeting the other night. Follow-up conversations led me to believe that it was intended one way and it was taken another. And I'm sorry that the road department's losing that million, but it kind of has moved us forward. And so thank you for getting us to this point. I think that really I would probably dovetail on what Rick Cochran said and maybe a little bit of what Ann talked about. We find ourselves maybe 3 years into these severe cuts. And I wasn't kidding with you earlier in the year when I told you that the cuts that we had made were about as severe as we could get without discussing personnel layoffs, whatever you want to call it. I hope we never get to that point, but that's where these conversations were leading. And I don't know what the magic number is on the reserves. Is it $6 million? I don't know. I don't know why that's the number, but that's the one we've chosen. So we're there. What I really hope is that we recognize that we are bare bones, that if it requires this court to make a tough decision, as you've required of us to make tough decisions over the last 3 years, that you could actually revisit that millage discussion. And please consider that. I mean, we are bleeding to death. I'm speaking on behalf of all elected officials. We've met. we've discussed, we've racked our brains in how to pull this off year after year, but we cannot continue in this downward cycle. And I speak on behalf of all. We've had these discussions. Rick, what you talked about were our employees. I think that's been my plea every year that I've been in office. I'm in my 11th year as sheriff here. And you know my heart, I hope, and that is that our people are our most important resources. And I sat back and didn't say anything this year because I could see where we were going. And I was actually thankful to hear you discussing that we were going to get anything, that the bonuses were even on the table. But what I was a little disappointed in, I'm just going to be frank and open with you, is that you took a percentage across the board bonus and you turned it into the same amount across the board, where I've got a 20-year employee and a 6-month employee that are going to get the same amount of money for other people have devoted their lives to taking on more responsibility, committing themselves to be with this county for long periods of time, and we're recognizing a person that has been here a year, 6 months to a year, as the same as we are that 20-year person. I just didn't agree with that, but I sat back because I figured that this was what we were going to get. But I want you to know now at the end that I hope that next year we can please, oh please, try get us in line with our employee benefits, with our pay. I read the paper every day just like you do, and I see Benton County getting pay raises and merit increases in Siloam Springs, Fayetteville, Springdale. I've just lost another deputy to Fayetteville. I've got another one on their list. This is going to continue, and I know I'm speaking about myself, but I would imagine that the folks sitting behind me would wholeheartedly agree. This is another area that we can't just keep doing patchwork on. We have got to come up to speed. Please, oh please, put that at the front burner next year as we begin our budget discussions. I can do without a car, but I can't do without my people. And so please, I know that your heart is in the right place, and we've all got tough decisions to make. But please, let's put that at the front of our budget discussions next year. Thank you for your hard work this year. You guys got a horrible job. You know, you can't please anybody, and I know that. But I'll continue to say we're in this together. I think your hearts are in the right place. I know mine is, and the elected officials are. But I guess those are my comments. But please, first and foremost, let's remember our employees. Thank you.
I have a court member that wants to be recognized, but then I'll come back to the public. J.P. Harbison.
I want all the county employees to thank Becky Llewellyn for the amount of money that she put into the pot so that we could do these bonuses, because if we had not had that money, it would have even been more difficult than it was. So, we appreciate her. All of the county officials, though, have helped and, step up when they have extra funds that they've shared with the county. Thank you.
J.P. Madison.
Thank you, Judge. I just wanted to thank the sheriff for his positive remarks. This has been a very trying process for all of us, and I am grateful that everybody went along on the roller coaster ride, because that's what it was. I know it was tough. It's not easy for us either. We come to these meetings and struggle with decisions, and everything we do has to happen in these meetings. And so I know J.P. Maxwell was well-intentioned with his 2% reduction. He was trying to come up with a different solution from last year with targeted cuts that didn't go over well either. And so we struggled to find the perfect solution, and there's just not one. But I appreciated the sheriff's positive message. The employees are at the forefront of this discussion, there's no doubt, because we couldn't be the county without our employees. I know that's foremost on my mind. We've got to make the money work. You're right. And I just wanted to thank you for your positive message, because I think that's a good way to wrap this discussion up.
J.P. Lindstrom.
I just want to make a quick comment on one of the questions the sheriff asked about the reserves. Roger Haney used to preach that we needed to have 3 months reserves. That's where this concept comes from. And 3 months reserves is not $6 million, it's $15 million. I have to admit, I've never really agreed with Roger Haney's view of $15 million. I think we got that much money laying around unspent. We're overtaxing somebody, personally. But I don't believe $6 million is an unreasonable reserve either, because it doesn't take much of a disaster or late getting your tax money in, et cetera, to need that kind of money. But that's where that number comes from, Mr. Haney, so you can thank him for that. Thank you, Judge.
Okay, anyone else from the audience? Yes, ma'am. Come forward, please, and identify yourself. Okay. I'm sorry, Donnie. We'll get you next. Just identify yourself, please.
My name is Christy Weaver, and I'm not here as a department head or an elected official. I'm just here as a concerned citizen, and this is about the fourth, I think, Quorum Court meeting that I've attended over the last course of the couple months. And I have posed a question to several Quorum Court members that has yet to be a clear answer given, and that question is, why was the millage cut in the first place? It's my understanding, I didn't go back and look at public record, but it's my understanding that before it was reduced by the half mil, that there was plenty of money in reserves, I believe somewhere between like 15, 18 million, if I'm correct, in reserves. And I just think everybody here probably has the same question as I do. Why was it cut? And I've had several theories given to me that it was political agendas or this thing or that thing. And I do believe, I know you guys have given a lot of time to be able to do this budget, and you guys have put a lot into it, your own personal time, and I really do appreciate all the time that you guys put into it, and I think you guys do a great job, and I wouldn't want your job, but I just am just genuinely concerned and asking, why was it cut? Why can't we raise it back up? It just is common sense to me that if we're not getting the revenue that we need at the rate that we're currently have, why don't we raise it? And it's also my understanding from talking to some of the JPs that if we get closer to that 5 millage mark, that there are other monies that we can get from the government that aren't available at the lower millage rate. So if we can be, have more income, and I was also under the understanding from what the people I've talked to, that hardly anybody noticed when that millage was dropped because it's only like a $20 or $30 drop in taxes for the average household. So I just don't understand if that much money countywide can turn into that much revenue. I don't understand why we can't raise it back up. And is that something that could be discussed at the beginning of this next year, and we can get the budget turned around for the following year? Thank you.
Thank you, dear. I'm going to recognize Zaga first.
I just want to make sure everybody understands that when it comes to the question of the millage, it was set in November. By law, it's set for the year until next November. So not that it's done for 2016.
Okay. J.P. Lindstrom.
I just want to answer your question in a very clear, concise way. I'm the one that made the motion to reduce that tax by 1/2 mil, and the very explicit reason that I did it was because we had $18 million in reserves. Revenue was stronger then than it is now, and it was pretty clear in my mind that people were overtaxed, and that tax reduction passed unanimously on the court. Democrat and Republican alike, everybody felt like we were overtaxing the people. That's the reason why it happened. I believe personally, and I've had this confirmed by the treasurer and the assessor, that we're getting more money on property tax right now than we were before we cut the millage, because appraisals have gone up. And I really don't like the rhetoric that it's just $10 out of somebody's pocket when you cut a 1/2 mil. It's $10 for every 100,000 evaluation of your property, and in Springdale, that's times 51.5, not times 5. So millage is a very high, property tax is an extremely high tax. I wrote a fairly large check myself this year and sent down here. I'm sure Sue Madison did the same thing. So I'm just glad I'm not Mr. Lindsay and have to send his tax check in. But it's not $10, it's 10 times every 100,000 evaluation times 51.5. That's how you figure property tax. So people here make it sound like it's a loaf of bread or a gallon of milk. It's a lot more money than that out of the taxpayer's pocket. And that includes 80-year-old women that are living in a house that their husband left them paid for. You know, they can't raise their property tax by assessment, but they've still got to pay it, or we're going to own it. And Mr. Sylvester will sell it and pay their taxes with it. So property tax is a... He will. That includes you too, Sheriff. You better pay those taxes. But this property tax is a big issue with people. You know, maybe some of you don't feel it very bad, but it is a major tax. I think Mr. Haney told me that property tax brings in an estimated $600 million a year through this court. Is that about right, somebody?
I have to check your numbers.
Most of that goes to the schools, obviously. But what's left, we get to run the county with, which is a very small percentage of that. Thank you, Madam Judge.
J.P. Harbison.
I want to answer Mrs. Weaver's question also. I voted for the reduction in millage, and I wished I hadn't have. And I did it because I felt I was out on a limb and it was being sawed off, and that I would be pictured as someone in favor of taxes. And that's why I voted for it. Roger Haney warned us what was going to happen. And it has happened, and we are going to have to bite the bullet and determine a reasonable amount of taxation to run this county. I also pay a large tax bill. I own some property. So you're right. The average person only pays somewhere, I think it was $8 to $10 on that 0.5. It's probably increased 20 to 30 now. But the schools get practically all of that property tax money. We have to run this county efficiently, and we have to have money to do it. And I'm challenging all of the other JPs to look at this very seriously for this next year. Thank you.
J.P. Madison.
Thank you, Judge. Mrs. Weaver, I think the reason you haven't gotten an answer to your question is probably because there's 15 different answers from the 15 people who voted, and it's not even these 15 people because it was a different court that voted on that. But I'll tell you, I struggled with that vote because I thought that 0.5 might be a little too much, and I pushed for an amendment to make it a quarter of a mil instead to moderate, and that failed. So... But my rationale in ultimately voting for it was, if you look, I looked back historically. I think Ms. Bollinger or Ms. Beeks got me the history because I hadn't been here for the history of it. But if you look back at the history over time, periodically over the years, the court had reduced the millage because of the increase in property values and then simply just the increase in the number of parcels that were being appraised. Because as property values go up and the property goes up, you kind of have to moderate that. And so I felt like it had been quite a long time since we had reduced that. And I feel that that kind of levels it out for the taxpayer, because as your property value goes up, we can kind of lessen the blow a little bit by reducing the millage. And that's not a huge loss in income to us because of the increased value overall. But I think your frustration is because there's 15 different answers. And I would just tell you that it was unsuccessful. I was unsuccessful in getting it to be a lesser reduction. But over time, the court has done that. They have moderated that. So that was sort of just to add to trying to give you some justification for what we did a few years ago. Thank you, Judge.
J.P. Dennis.
Thank you, Madam Judge. While we're on history lessons, I brought it before the court to raise the millage back to where it was, and this court voted no. So just for the record, you'll know that. With that, we could have given you the 2% increase on salaries, as the sheriff asked for, and we could also given the bonus, which I was for. So we could have done a lot of things better had we increased that millage, but we voted no for it. So Perhaps this next year, I'll bring it forward, and we can vote yes for it. Thank you.
J.P. Pond.
I would also like to express my gratitude for Ms. Weaver coming forward. I'm one of the JPs that voted for that $500,000 cut. But at the time I did that, we had people on the court who would have come back and voted to replace it before we got in the kind of mess we're in now. And I can't say I'm sorry that I voted for the cut, because we did have a lot of money in reserve, but I truly apologize that we don't have a majority of people on the court who would have voted to reinstate the $500,000 that we took away. Thank you for coming, and I hope to see you very often.
J.P. Bowman.
Call for the question.
Did I get a second on that?
Yes, you
Okay,
did.
so the discussion has ended. I know I've had 2 or 3 people in the audience, and I'm sorry if they've called for the questions. I'm going to have to go ahead and take a vote. Before we take the vote, I want each and every one of you to know how much I appreciate you all being here tonight. I know you've taken out of your life and your families, and again, thank you very much for being here. Carly, if you call the roll, please.
Wait. I want to make sure they understand you're voting on ending discussion now, not on the actual ordinance.
Harvey Bowman.
Yes.
Rick Cochran.
Yes.
Robert Dennis.
Yes.
Lisa Ake. Ann Harbison. Sharon Lloyd. Tom Lundstrom.
Yes.
Eva Madison. Sue Madison. Joe Maxwell. Gary McHenry. Joe Patterson. Butch Pond. Bill Ussery. Daniel Balls.
Judge, you're on to the vote for the on the ordinance.
Now, if we get 10 votes, that passes the budget. If not, we're going to have to put it on 2 more readings. Is that correct?
That's correct, Judge.
Okay.
Although, let me say this. If it's the will of the court, you could suspend the rules tonight and put it on second reading and third reading, even if it does not pass by 10 votes. In other words, justices could register their no vote on the budget if they choose to do that tonight, and but still move it up if it is apparent, if it is that is what they wish to do, and get it passed tonight if it's only going to pass by 8 votes.
Everybody understand what we're voting on? Okay, Carly, call the roll.
Harvey Bowman.
Yes.
Rick Cochran.
Yes.
Robert Dennis.
Yes.
Lisa Ake. Ann Harbison.
Yes, but I don't like the road. Taking it out of the road.
Sharon Lloyd. Tom Lundstrom.
Yes.
Eva Madison. Sue Madison. Joe Maxwell. Gary McHenry. Joe Patterson. Butch Pond. Bill Ussery. Daniel Balls.
Budget's passed. Is that correct?
Judge, the yeas are 13, the nays are none. The
Yes.
budget is finished.
J.P. Madison, you're recognized.
Thank you, Judge. I wanted to have that vote safely behind us before I shared some philosophical comments, as the rest of you have done. I first want to explain somewhat of a disappointment over the turn we took tonight. At our last meeting, we were sort of at the end of our rope. I felt like we had been to budget meetings. We'd gone over line items. We'd grilled department heads and elected officials about water bottles and pizzas at the JDC. I mean, we really, really looked at the budget. And even in our last attempt to try and cut the IT budget, we raised it. So I felt like we were very frustrated in trying to get to our goal of greater reserves. And I supported J.P. Maxwell's motion to let's let the people who know their budgets best figure out where they might make some cuts. And perhaps it was a larger number than anybody wanted to deal with. But, you know, the reaction was somewhat troubling to me. We had people threatening to close offices. We had much gnashing of teeth. But yet I worried that we didn't hear from the diligent, hardworking people that sat down and took a pencil and went through their budgets and we'll never know what they might have come up with to save some more money. And I feel in some ways we've done a disservice to them because they took us at our word. We voted and said, we expect you to cut 2%. And now we've just sort of said, never mind. And I want to express gratitude that some people did that. I mean, there's always a little bit of slack, and it might not be pizzas at JDC, but I just want them to know that I was serious in thinking that they would help us come up with some cuts. And I want them to know I appreciate the work that they may have done. But try to keep that in the back of your minds for another day. So, thank you.
J.P. Patterson.
Thank you, Judge. Looking back about 2 or 3 weeks, and things happened at Paris the way they did, kind of gives you an idea, because right now tonight, we've settled this for 2016. So when we come back in a couple of weeks, we're already looking at 2017. And that's not an easy thing to do, because not only will we be looking at 2017, several of us probably won't run again, or some won't be here, or whatever. So you're doing that for people that's going to replace you. So they're going to get what we decide we're going to do next year. They're going to get that in 2017, and they get to make that choice in 2019 for somebody else. So it's not just sitting down just thinking, well, here, let's just do this. It takes a lot of thought and a lot of things have to enter into it. It's not an easy job. It's interesting. I enjoy doing it. I've done it a long time. But it's not perfect science to get to where we are in and up. It just takes a lot of work, because we have 15 different views up here to a degree. And none of us is probably 100% right, I don't think. Anyway, I appreciate everything that's done now, and we can go home and think about something else. Thank you.
I've got 2 or 3 more people in the audience I would like to go ahead. They've had their hand up for quite a while. So, Donnie, do you still want to come forward? Did I see Juliet? Come and identify yourself, please.
I'm Juliet Ritchie, the Washington County Planning Director, and a member of the public of Washington County as well. I want to say that for the most part, until that most recent comment from Ms. Sue Madison, I heard some of the most positive things that I've heard all year. I feel like as far as looking forward to next year and really solving some of the issues on the table for the county. I know that I'm just a department head of a small department, but I've worked in Washington County now for 10 and a half, almost 11 years. And I feel like I do have some familiarity with what happens in different departments in the county. A couple months ago, I typed up something that I wanted to present at some point during the budget process, and I wasn't sure when, and I would like to read it now. It will probably take me more like 4 minutes instead of 3, if I could have that time. But I want you to know, well, let me just read it. As many of you know, I'm Juliet Ritchie, the current Planning Director for Washington County, Arkansas. I've worked for Washington County now for 10 and a half years. For a majority of that time, the county has been a wonderful place to work. I recently, a couple months ago now, returned to work 9.5 weeks after the birth of my second child. While it is bittersweet to return to work, I was happy to return because I truly enjoy the people that I work with every day, and I feel like the planning office, as well as many other offices in the county, provide a needed service to the citizens of Washington County that truly make our community better and a safer place to live and work. To be a part of something larger than myself that directly affects the lives of those around me and my own children is a thing of amazement to me on a regular basis. It makes me so proud to work as an integral part of the community in which I live. I feel like I'm able to help identify and solve problems on a daily basis that dramatically affect the quality of life for many citizens of our county across many different social stratas and a variety of personal goals that I have, whether it's to help someone split that they have to split their land for their children, expand a church, restore a historical community building, build a new commercial business, or create a new subdivision, providing new housing options for the people that live in our county. My job enables me to look critically at the way all of these actions happen and find ways to allow them to happen in a way that that has the most benefit for the developer or owner without compromising the safety or crippling the county with undue future maintenance costs. I feel that subtle balance through regulation and review like this are a piece of what makes our community a great one, and one of the qualities that help an area to continue to grow and be a desirable place to live and to conserve future tax dollars. Sometimes I think that conservation is actually more dramatic than you would think. One of the things that I enjoy most is working interdepartmentally with many of the other departments at the county on a daily basis. I don't know if you all know this, but I work with the county fire marshal, the road department, the environmental affairs office, the county attorney, the county public utilities coordinator, the 911 and addressing office and Department of Emergency Management, the sheriff's office, and the IT department, literally on a daily to weekly basis. I consider the supervisors and department heads of these departments and agencies to be some of the best, most service-minded individuals that I have ever had the pleasure of knowing. They're always willing to impart their knowledge to work with you and solve a problem at hand. Many of them are individuals who have lived in Northwest Arkansas their whole lives, or at least a long time, and are intimately familiar with the communities that they work within and have unique skill sets to solve the problems that arise. They're also some of the most honest, hardworking, and self-sacrificing people that I know. Most are diligent managers of their budgets and monies, ever cognizant of the fact that the money comes directly from the taxpayers themselves. As with any organization, there are likely to be exceptions to this, but they are not the people that I work with on a routine basis, and I feel that they are not by any stretch a large percentage of the department heads or elected officials within the county. It's a true joy to work with people who are so community-minded and truly invested in making Washington County look and function its best in all situations. As a department head, I have done my share of hiring new employees over the years. One thing I always tell a job applicant is that while the pay may not be as high as other jobs, if you take this job, you will work with some of the best people that you ever meet. And I believe that. I'm so proud of the services that we provide to our citizens. Our county provides robust services that are above and beyond many counties in Arkansas, and is part of what makes our county a leader in desirable places to live, work, and have a business. Those services cost money, to be sure. We serve a large population, and we also serve people both inside the city limits and outside. As the desirability of our area continues to grow, so will the population. Our services are already becoming more pressured, and the need for additional capital expenditures and the need for personnel are greater now this year than they were the year before, and they will continue to become greater as we serve more people. Over the past year and a half, I feel that like a dark cloud has descended over the county. There have been personal attacks and fingers pointed, accusations made, and legal actions. There have been many people hurt on all sides, and in my opinion, a large plummet in the morale of many of the employees of this great county. I've seen people I know without a doubt to be fine people attacked and spoken to with a lack of respect that filled me with a feeling of sadness and dread. I understand that there is a finite amount of money to provide services, and I have no doubt that this is a very understandable concept to everyone with who I work. As a whole, we are more than willing to make cuts that get us through the lean, hard years and forego capital expenditures for several years. However, as has also been stated tonight, this is not a sustainable model if we are all to continue to provide the services or level of services that we have provided for many years in this county. Are the services or level of service that we provide to county citizens that you feel are those things that you feel are expendable at no matter what? If so, I would like for you to name those services. Is the future extinguishment or diminishment of these services, which are part of what makes a community a great place to live, work, and thrive, worth dismissing the idea of a millage reinstatement. Because that's what I feel like we are looking at long term. Also, a less direct impact of that, but one that I feel is even worse, is cutting the ability to provide quality services that are needed by the community that will ultimately deter the truly great quality of people that we've enjoyed for many years from working at the county. As you've said many times yourselves, the employees are the greatest assets of the county. If the quality of the people that we are able to attract due to the opportunity to be able to do one's job well diminishes, that in the long run, I fear will be the largest negative impact on the county. I know that the sheriff, y'all worked with him to work to try to provide incentives in order to keep quality people on the force. Many other departments within the county are sorely in need of such programs. I really hope that we can work together next year and in the coming years to find a way to meet those needs, and they don't all have to be monetary. As a manager myself, I know that the sheer amount and quality of what can be achieved is highly dependent on the ability to attract and retain quality people. And these people have to be able to have pride in their organization and the ability to solve problems and provide the services that they are hired for. I do have respect for the job that you are required to do, primarily the approval of the budgets, which requires weighing many things in your decision making. I know that you care about the county and the community as well, or you would not be doing this job. I just ask that you would please consider in the future the long-term effects that your funding decisions make in more ways than just solving the budget for each year as it comes. I feel like sometimes that some of these other long-term impacts, like employee morale and looking forward into how we can train people and keep really good quality employees, gets lost in the immediacy of balancing the numbers in front of us for the current year only. And I realize that some of those things had already been addressed tonight. And I really do feel like we're on the right track. And I know that it's not up to me, and I feel like it's a little bit of a risky move for me to read those things. And like I said, I thought about it for about 3 months. But I feel like we need to discuss them. And it's important to me.
Thank you very much, Juliet. Appreciate you. I know it's getting long. I know people are getting tired, but I'll stay here all night as long as some of you wants to address the courts. Don't have any more hands going up? J.P. Ussery?
I think that I'm on kind of the same line as Juliet Ritchie. I've written out what I'd like to say, and I'm not going to take the time to read every bit of it, but I'm just going to say that we've had some very trying times over the last few months, and I think that we've somehow failed to remember that as elected officials on this court, that we're called to be servant leaders. We're called to serve the people of the county, and we're called to lead the people, the workers of the county. I think we failed to see that, and I'm putting myself in the same category. Leadership, by its very nature, demands that we give direction, and I think that we fail to do that. And I'm going to do all I can in the coming year to see that we get direction. I don't necessarily mean anybody individually, but I'm just saying as a court, I had no idea that we were aiming for $6 million in reserves. If I knew that, we would have hit that a long time ago. I didn't know that. It wasn't clear to me. And as a court, we failed in that area. And I'm putting myself, again, in the category on every one of these things. But I'm bound to determine, I've been in business worked in business for over 35 years. And successfully. And in order for us to be successful, the biggest thing that we can possibly do is to build a coalition. That our job is not to make friends, but our job is absolutely to lead and have the people that we're leading to follow us, because we're not leaders if they're not following us. We can dictate what they do, but I'll guarantee you they're not going to follow us the second that we're out of the room. That's just part of leadership, and we need to absolutely step up in that area. All right, and then the next thing is that we need to consider the cost. That if what we're saying, if it's going to make somebody mad, if it's going to make them uncooperative, or if we're going to demean somebody, we need to not say it. We need to rethink it. If we're going to bring somebody before this board, something before this committee, we need to have thought it all the way through. To bring 2% in here and not have a clue what it really means is not right. That thing should have never gone through, because these people didn't have any idea what we expected of them. And that's not right. That's something that has to change. And I'm putting myself in that category. The other thing is that anytime something comes up that we've got a proposal, I always say, and then what? Because what's happened is we've thrown some things out here that there's absolutely no way that we could possibly make the mechanics of that thing work. It may be a great theory, but what happens, what's the next step whenever we do this? What happens next? We need to think that through before we bring it before the board. We need to put it in writing. And then one of the close to the last things is we should give 24 hours notice. For example, the 2% thing, if we had 24 hours, I think every one of us would have looked at that a lot differently. If that had been in our email the night before, we would have come prepared. We would have done the due diligence that needs to be done. And then what we need to do is we need to set a course for next year. What we've been doing is putting Band-Aids, just like it's been said many times tonight. We've been putting Band-Aids on an issue. We've been sitting here telling people how to pump the water out of the ship while the ship's sinking instead of trying to keep the ship from sinking. And so there are several things that we can do. Tax dollars are being lost to the high volume of Internet sales. This year they're saying Internet sales over the Christmas season has gone almost equal what's the brick and mortar sales. People don't voluntarily pay taxes on that stuff. And I realize that as a county, there's nothing we can do here, but we can certainly put pressure on the people in Little Rock and do all we can do to see that our state starts collecting that tax. I mean, we can't say it's impossible until we try, but we definitely have to try that. We need to look at the millage. There are about, I heard on the radio this week, there are 25 people a day moving into Northwest Arkansas. The people that are moving in, many of them are living in apartments. 10 years ago, 15 years ago, they're moving into single-family dwellings. They don't pay the same amount of taxes. And also, there are a lot of people that are coming in affluent, but we're attracting a whole lot of people that aren't affluent. And they take up more services and they pay less taxes. So we need to try to figure out where we're at. We need to make a direction. But my suggestion is, and I'm going to start in January, figuring out what we need to do to get back on track and move forward and go the direction we need to go so we can be successful as a county, so we don't have to have these meetings like this tonight. Thank you very much.
Anyone else? I have nothing else to come before the court. Do I have a motion to adjourn? Second. Oh, by the way, I do want to announce.
Turn your mic on.
We will not be meeting Thursday evening. So that's our announcement. I wanted to let you know. So, all in favor of adjourning?
Aye.
Committee meetings.